In our last episode, Dr. Hurst, author of Life's Fingerprint, talked about how roles and birth order shapes us growing up. When parents start aging and families have to make difficult decisions, why do those old patterns often reappear? Dr. Hurst, thanks for staying around and we're having this second conversation. This is going to be great. I want to ask you why many families are surprised when siblings react very differently to caregiving responsibilities. Why does that happen?
They're expressing their personalities through their birth order as adults and not as children. As children, sometimes these characteristics are just ignored, blown off. They're just emotional or whatever. But when they become adults, all of a sudden they become who they really are or their life's fingerprint. And they're expressing fully their birth order. And especially true when you have double birth orders, which we talked about in an earlier segment. These children, now adults, will switch back and forth between these different birth orders, and they still don't understand why it's happening, but they know how to get at an older sibling or a younger sibling. They know how to get their attention, so to speak, and get their way. That's what they did as kids. Do it as adults too, and it does not change.
Have you seen situations where one sibling naturally becomes the responsible one while another seems to step back or avoid the situation?
Yes, I see it all the time in patients. I see how their personalities are different and how, especially between the first two siblings, if there's a lot of sibling rivalry, how one will just drop out completely and go in a different direction. And the younger one will take over the role as the firstborn and become responsible. I see that many times. It doesn't seem to happen so much later in the birth order line. The first two siblings, that's the real dynamic sibling rivalry thing. It's in the Bible. Cain and Abel had a little falling out, and it didn't end too well because one thought he was more in favor of God than the other and escalated. And sometimes when I see these murder cases, family situations, you can look at it and you start looking through life through the lens of birth order. All of a sudden, you see the similarities, you see the problems. And this is what happens later in life when the parents need help of the children to survive. Who is going to be the one to help them in the nursing home? Who is going to be the one to help them with their finances? Each birth order has some unique characteristics. Number one, they want to give direction. But number two, because they're so good at trying to hold their life together and not be influenced by others, they're also very good with money. And if the money issue was a problem in the family, the number two kid would be the one to try to help keep the assets together. And then if it's really about the caregivers, the number three, the emotional connection one, that one could pick out who's the nurse that's going to come and help mom and dad. Who is the home health person? I don't think they're doing the right thing. That's the one that would be sensitive. So each family member with their birth order has something to add. And if each member in the family can understand that somebody else in the family is better at this than they are, it makes the situation so much better. And they start working together as a family instead of at each other's throats.
Yeah. For the person who ends up carrying most of the responsibility, why can that role feel both natural and exhausting at the same time?
It can feel natural if it's the natural birth order for that person to do. It's exhausting when they have to fulfill a role that is not theirs. For instance, if in the family the number two's older sibling dies, number two has to step up and become the number one and take on the responsibilities of number one, but they're still a number two. So they're playing the part of a number one, which is not their natural spot. So it can be exhausting, but they are who they are. And that happens in every family. And as the siblings are deceased, the other siblings all move up a step in birth order.
So when agreeing about care decisions, finances, or what's best for a parent, are those disagreements usually about the present moment or something deeper?
Oh, that's a very good question. I have to say it's something deeper. It started when they were kids. and it never changes. Just like I used the analogy in our last segment about Thanksgiving dinner and Christmas dinner, everybody is who they are, they don't change. And again, that's why I use the word life's fingerprint, because your fingerprints don't change. It's not that everybody has that you have a unique fingerprint, but the fingerprint doesn't change. Your birth order doesn't change. It can be modified, but you're not going to change somebody. Let me give you a little story. One of the gals in my office, she is a number 4 birth order. Number 4s are the baby in the family, and they just love to have fun. And her best friend, by the way, her best friend is the same birth order, and that happens very common. Her best friend is also a number 4. Both of them had number 1 girls. And one day at lunch, they said, we're going to go out to lunch together, but we don't know where to go. And one of the girls said, let's call our daughters and they'll tell us where we should go to lunch. So even though the daughter was 20 years younger than the mother, the daughter had a higher birth order. And so the number 4 let the daughter be in charge and make the decision.
Oh,
that's an interesting concept on it, isn't it?
Yeah. In your experience, what are some of the common misunderstandings between siblings during the tough times, making healthcare decisions, funeral arrangements, selling an estate?
And it goes back to their birth order and who wants to be in charge. And everybody has their intrinsic personality characteristics. But when it comes time for these very emotional decisions, sometimes some of the kids, their emotions will take control and blow things all out of proportion. And that's what you have to be careful of when you're dealing with the death of a parent and the relationship to the other siblings. Look at the birth order. Look at why they're doing what they're doing and have a little compassion for they don't have any control over this. When they have single birth orders, it's really easy. When you have double birth orders, it's much more difficult because, like in your case with your younger sibling, is she acting like a 2 today for this situation, or is she acting like a 3 today? If she's acting like a 2 today, you're going to get nowhere. She's not going to listen to reason. She's going to do what she wants to do. If she's a 3, she's very emotional about it, but yet she's going to listen a little bit because she understands the interrelationships. So you go back and forth.
2. She's going to be a 2. It's always going to be a 2. It's always going to be a 2. Sorry.
It's going to be a 2 against you 2.
And there's where the problem will lie. Okay, go on. Sorry. Again, my inside head voices are coming out. Sorry about this. Anyway,
yes,
go on.
But everyone can relate to this. And again, I get back to, in the book, in the first chapter, it talks about finding your true birth order. And you have to look at the spacing between the siblings. If they're stepbrothers and sisters, and if there was a blended family, how did this change your birth order? Was there a death of a child in the family? Was there a handicapped child in the family? That's going to change your true birth order. Were there adopted siblings? And of course, this one will really throw you for a loop. Were there any twins in the family?
Ooh,
or triplets?
Didn't even think about that.
My gosh, yes. I've heard every question. And what happens when the twins come into the family? It changes the dynamics of the whole family, because even though there are 2 births, it's 1 birth. So if the first child is born and then a couple of years later the twins are born, it's all about the twins. And believe it or not, the twins take on number 2 and number 3 birth order. They always do. And they're always, if they're told who's older, it doesn't make a difference if it's right or wrong, or it's 1 minute. They know I'm a 2 and the other one knows they're a 3. But what happens in number 1? It's always supposed to be about number 1, but it's never now about number 1. It's about the twins. And number 1 says, what about me? And number 1 can't be mean to the twins because number 1 is supposed to take care of the twins. So number 1 has all this pent up anger all their life. I've seen it. And maybe you have too.
just shaking my head here the whole time. Your work is fascinating, and it's so true in terms of how family dynamics they come about. Again, families are messy. I want to ask
Yeah.
you the question. We've got mom and dad see that, and a lot of, adult children see the problems that mom and dad, their mobility, maybe their and they know they haven't got their estate and legacy issues in place. One sibling sees it and wants to do something, have the conversation with mom and dad, and they might go to the other sibling to say, we should do this. And because of the birth order, will one sibling say, hey, you're only interested in their money or you're only interested in your inheritance, and they're not thinking straight? Do birth orders come into play when we have to have difficult conversations when it comes to mom and dad?
Always, always. And it goes back to when the kids were growing up and the relationships they had between them. They come out as adults if they were wonderful relationships, like Jimmy Stewart, who's a number one, and he had a younger sister, and she didn't see any rivalry issues. She knew her place, and Jimmy never saw that she was going to try to knock him off the throne. And they became very supportive as kids. They were supportive, and as adults, they were supportive. Everybody knows Jimmy Stewart, and he was like every man's man. He was such a nice guy.
Right.
Well, that's why he was a nice guy. And in his family, believe it or not, he came from a family, they ran a hardware store. And he worked in a hardware store, and I think so did his sister. And so the family, they interacted very well. But if the family were at cats and dogs and whatever growing up, the same thing is going to occur when the estate comes up. You can't stop it, but you can understand it. You should understand what you're getting into. It's like a blended family. You're getting into that family. And if you can identify all their birth orders and their relationships, now you know who you should talk to, who you shouldn't talk to, who's the emotional one, who's going to put everything together. Is it ever going to be resolved? Okay. And that's what's so important. And the important thing that I found with birth order is understanding what's going on. You can't change it, but you can understand it. When my number 4 patient drops their appointment card in the office before they go through the door, I don't get upset because I know this is the baby in the family and someone else is going to take care of them. And number 4 thinks the same way. And they don't change in lifetime. Life is fun for them. And if it's not fun, they don't like to do it because someone else is always there to pick up the pieces. Okay? That never changes. It just modifies somewhat as an adult. To me, it's fascinating what's going on because I look at life through people's birth orders, and then I understand what's going to happen and how they're going to act. It's interesting. You need to look at life differently now.
I knew there was something because what I've gone through and I see families going through, there's got to be a reason why we end up the way we are in certain situations. And that's why I found your work so fascinating. So if someone's listening right now, they feel stuck in one of those family roles, maybe the fixer, the peacemaker, or the one who carries everything, what might help them step back and see the situations more clearly, especially when it comes to dealing with mom and dad?
Yeah. Okay. First, understand your birth order, understand your siblings' birth orders, and know that they can't help how they feel and how they're going to react to the situation. And when you realize that, and you know they're going to react hostile, but very hostile toward you when you bring up this issue and whatever, then don't bring up that issue because you know that's a trigger. And the same triggers that triggered you as kids are going to trigger you as adults too. And by understanding what's going to be happening and you see it happening, you say to yourself, I understand perfectly what's going on. I'm not going to be upset. It's not going to upset me because I know that's what she's going to do. And then it's not a mystery anymore. So it makes it a little easier.
If you understand and you see, you know who they are, and they are going to be who they are, how do you move forward? We got mom and dad, we've got issues to take care of. How do we move forward? Because you know who you're dealing with.
Yes, each birth order, and I know as an orthodontist, and I look at these birth orders, I have to get their cooperation. So I approach them differently to get the same end result. For instance, with the number one, we'll talk about the pure birth. Number one child, they believe in authority. So whatever the authority says, do this, they follow through. The number two child, he's not going to listen to authority. I have to explain to the number two child what is going to happen. And once he understands what's going to happen, he'll go along with me. The number three child is so sensitive to everything around them that I have to use very light forces. I have to tell them that I understand how they feel, because the number three will not let you know that they are hurting, because they know they have no defense against it. But once you say to them, I feel your pain, they can handle it. And then the number four child, the true baby, that child, you just know that you have cooperation issues only because they're relying on someone else to make a decision for them, to help them. You approach them all a little bit differently. On our website, we also have T-shirts that we sell related to birth order. And this goes along with what we're talking about. The only child, the T-shirt says, Superman was an only child. He was going to save the world. The firstborn, it says, put me in charge. The secondborn says, I don't want to be told what to do. Don't tell me what to do. Number three says, I feel your pain. And number four says, I don't want to grow up. So they can find them all on www.com.
How can people find out more about your work and what you do? And tell me a little bit about your website, but I've got one more question before you answer.
Sure.
If listeners were to take away one idea from the two conversations that we've had about how childhood roles shape us and how they show up later in life, what would you hope they remember when their own families face these tough moments?
That there's a resource out there that can help answer all their questions, and to understanding birth orders and all the different birth orders and the relationships to all the kids to each other, and how they're going to be influenced on this new crisis in the family. They're not alone. There's answers out there, and they can be prepared for the worst if they understand everybody in the family and everybody's role that they can play.
How can people find out more about you and your work?
We have a website, which I had mentioned earlier, and it's easy to remember. It's mybirthorder.com. And on that website, they can find the book. Now, I have to mention that the book is also available on Amazon, but that book is a paperback book. It was the first edition. And the current edition is a hardcover book with everything in color. And I'll hold it up here so you can see that. And in the back of the book is a section on questions that I got at some of my seminars, and the answers to the common questions people have about birth order. But they can also find it. We also have the book on a CD and a USB that they can plug into their computer.
Wow.
So with me narrating it as well.
I'm fortunate. You're happy. You were nice enough to send me I've got the hardcover version, and I've been going through it. Dr. Robert Hurst, author of Life's Fingerprint, How Birth Order Affects Your Past Throughout Life, here. I want to thank you so much for this amazing conversation, both conversations. It's opened my eyes a little bit more. It also helps me understand not only my situation and how we ended up where we ended up. Go out and get your book, because you've given me a lot of food for thought. And also they're going to learn so much more on how to make family dynamics in their own family be a lot easier to cope when things are going to get tougher. And I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening. I really appreciate you spending your time here. If this episode resonated, please consider sharing it with someone who might need it. And if you're able to, leaving a rating or a short comment helps this podcast reach people looking for these kinds of conversations. I've also shared a few simple, free resources on my website to help you slow things down and reflect. I'm glad you're here.